Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Grace to All with Paul Gray. And I'm really excited today because I have a good friend of mine, Mike Rowe, with us today. Mike lives on the West Coast. He divides his time between homes in California and Nevada. He's from Indianapolis to begin with. He's got a wonderful wife, June, whom he calls Junie, and she's sort of the one who's well, I won't say that, but she's the better looking of the two. I will say it.
And she's the better person too.
Mike went to Illinois State Normal University, where he has a business degree. He did his student teaching like me, but never taught like me, and it's been mostly self-employed. Until he retired a few years ago. Also, like me and like many of you all listening, he was reared in legalistic evangelical churches. He had an awakening, an encounter with the Holy Spirit, which we'll talk about. He then had a second one of those that's led to great changes in his life. He has a radio program and a Bible class that we'll talk about later on. But first of all, welcome, Mike. I'm so glad that you're with us.
Thank you, Paul. And I'm really honored that you've invited me to be on your podcast. And especially since you have such an august group that you have already interviewed. And I am just feeling very honored to be a part of that group.
Well, you fit right in, and thank you. And Mike came to our home in Lawrence, Kansas, and spent an afternoon and an evening with us one time a few years ago, and then we've been friends ever since. And he and his group were sort of a test group for our Pure Light Walker class. And boy, I got to tell you, he has the most wonderful people in his group. They're just I miss them since that 8 weeks is over, and they are the salt of the earth. And so, Mike, I want to start out like I always do by asking, how has your growing understanding of God's grace and unconditional love and the finished work at the cross, inclusion, how's that changed your relationships with people, in the company that you had and your kids still have, and your neighbors, friends, people at the store, where the rubber hits the road? How's it changed your relationships?
Well, it has obviously made some difference in them. Um, Much of my family, not not locally here, but back my extended family, cousins and aunts and uncles, um, have not been really favorable about what I've tried to share with them, and they pretty much have cut off any real communication with me from because of that. Because all of them were reared like I was in the same denomination primarily, and so there that has been um, it hasn't been devastating, a little disheartening, obviously, because I'd like to be able to share more, and but that has not happened. And of course, back in 1975, when I first started out in the Grace, um, basically all the older people in the church turned against me, and the younger ones were with me, and I created really, I'm sorry that it happened. I created really a problem in the church. I didn't intend to, but I did, and so that created some hard feelings, and so I finally left.
Uh, it hurts, doesn't it? When no easy way to get around that. It just hurts.
Yeah, but the what overcomes it for me anyway is the love of God that I know that and the freedom that I have uh, been the bondage that I've been freed from is just it far outweighs any loss of a fellowship with people. I don't like losing fellowship with people, but having fellowship with the Father and the Holy Spirit and Jesus is outweighs any loss that I've had of any humans here on earth.
Well, it does indeed. And you had a successful business that's still going. You had customers and suppliers and vendors and things like that. Uh, as you've been growing more and more in grace, did it change how you saw those people, how you related to them, to everybody?
Uh, Not really. When in business, um, uh, and of course, in 1975 was when I first, hit Grace, or Grace hit me, and so and I became, a very well. I was always kind of gregarious and outgoing, but um, my relationship with customers and so on has always been good.
Mm,
And not very many of them actually probably, knew of, what I believed.
mhm.
Some did, but we didn't really mix that much with business.
Mhm.
Okay. And if people brought anything up, then obviously I would jump in with both feet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I came to I didn't start understanding grace till about 10 or 11 years ago, and so uh, you've always been, I understand from your friends, a great guy and a nice guy and gregarious. I've always been gregarious, but I'm not sure I would have liked me as a friend back in my old days. But Grace has certainly made a difference there, and you've got some long-term friends I know, like Bill, that have been involved in this journey with you for 40 years or so, right?
Yeah, and of course, he's my best friend, and has been for 40 some years. But when I began to understand the universal saving significance of Jesus, he wasn't with me.
Oh, really?
No, he was a bit hesitant, and he was still into the penal substitutionary atonement of Jesus. And but and of course, as usual, over all those years, we could always argue and discuss doctrine, and even if we disagreed, that never changed our love for each other.
Mm.
My buddy Bill, I won't say his last name, but he is absolute the best friend anybody could ever have, and I love him to death.
Well, of course, I know him, not like you do, but from online, and he's the salt of the earth, and I love to see the things that he's written, and obviously, you guys have both had a good influence on each other, and what you said, Mike, about you could discuss. Uh, Theology or doctrine or whatever, and disagree but still be friends. Gosh, that's so important. And I know, just kind of bearing my heart here, but I know, um, when I started on this journey, I just thought everybody would be excited about it and want to know how good God
Yeah,
is and how loving
yeah.
He is. And you left the church. I was the founding senior pastor of our church, and so the people left me, and I preached it from 250 down to about 125, and then when I started really finding out about how deep God's grace went, I preached it down another 100 or so. Um, but there were some people in who were involved in in our church and in some other churches that I was friends with, that we've stayed great friends with. I mean, we can still go to coffee or go to lunch or go to a ball game with or whatever, and realize that we disagree theologically, but we're friends. On the other hand, some people made it very clear that, well, we can't be your friend anymore, and really what I figured out they were saying was we were only friends because we believed the same thing.
Yeah.
And uh, that that's just hard. I mean, it hurts. Gosh, I think about guys like, um, like the Apostle Paul and John and Peter, the others. They had their family, their friends, their whole. Of course, everybody in Israel, their life revolved around religion and stuff, and and they, boy, they suffered much more than we have, because they were really ostracized in huge ways, and of course he, eventually killed for it. We haven't had that happen, but there's no glossing over it. Uh, and for those who are listening, who have never experienced that kind of rejection, boy, I'm so glad for you. I want to prepare you that it might happen. As
Well, I've had rejection, but like I said, that um, uh, I mean, my own father did not reject me, but he did when I began to share this truth with him, he just couldn't deal with it, and but again, um, I mean, I have had this rejection over the years, but again, it just does not. Maybe I don't care enough about them. I don't know, but I actually do. When my buddy Bill didn't come along with me, it bothered me a little bit, but not much, because I've known all the years that Bill was always wanted to know the truth. Okay. And that's the difference between the folks that I see. He wanted to know the truth. And I knew that, with the seeds that I was planting in him, that sooner or later he would come to know. And he didn't come to understanding through me. He came to an understanding through a pastor friend of ours. And that's when, let's say that's when the seeds sprouted.
yeah,
Yeah. And it was funny. I have to tell you this because this is funny. It took him 2 or 3 weeks before he could tell me. And he called, I called him one day, and he said, "I've been meaning to call you." And he said, "I have to say," and he stuttered and he stuttered. I have to say you were right. And I just busted out laughing because I knew it would happen, and because he, being my best friend, has never rejected me, no matter what. It's we're just good buds.
Friends like that they're priceless, aren't they?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned 1975. Something happened. What happened, and how did it happen?
Well, I went to a layman's retreat with the denomination that I was a part of, and well, let me tell you basically about me. Up until that time, I held every job in the church except pastor, and but I was probably, at least as far as I can tell, the biggest hypocrite in the church. Okay,
Mm.
I mean, I said one thing and acted one way when I was around the church, but when I was out on the road and I was out selling on the road quite a bit, I did another and acted in other ways. And so I mean, I'm not proud of it, but I admit to it that I was a big hypocrite. And so anyway, I went to this layman's retreat. Far as I know, I was not seeking truth or anything else, but the speaker, and he was not a preacher, he was a businessman, but he said, in part of his teaching, he said, the song you sing but you don't believe, and the verse that you quote but you don't believe. And then he would name a song and he would name a verse, and all of a sudden the light went on in my head,
Mm.
and the Holy Spirit said, "That's you."
Wow.
And that was the turning point in my life, back in 1975. Yeah, it was what close to 45 years ago now. No, that's whatever it was. 45, yeah, 45 years ago. Anyway, that just hit me, and he kept using that phrase over and over during his seminar. And so on my way home from that meeting, I was driving home. It was at nighttime, and I And I just started thinking, I said, what do I believe? And I recognized, and of course, I recognized when he said it that I really didn't believe. I really didn't know what I believed. I said I knew the doctrines that the church had taught me, but did I really believe that? Because if I believed it, I would probably live it. And but I recognized I didn't believe it, and so I said, "What do I believe? Do I even believe in God?" So I looked at the stars and the moon and the earth, and I examined all. I said, "There's got to be a God." And because I had not had personal encounter with him, up to this point,
Ah,
so so I went home. The next morning, I got up, I opened the Bible on my kitchen table, and I said, "All right, God, I believe you exist, and I'm starting all over. I'm tossing out everything that I thought I've ever said I believed," and I did. I just
really?
yeah, I just tossed it out. Yeah, I hear people, who are going through this reconstruction, and they toss a little bit at a time, and that's fine. I mean, that's one way. I don't care how you get it done, just get it done. But anyway, I just tossed it out, and I said, "Okay, Lord, I'm starting over." I said, I've read this book several times. I do not understand what it says. I admitted to God. I said, I don't know what it says. I want to know. So I said, I'm going to start reading. I'm not going to try to figure it out. I'm just going to start reading, and you better explain it to me, because if you don't, I'm done. I'll quit. Yeah. And so I started. I don't even remember where I started. Probably Matthew. I think I started probably in the New Testament. But anyway, I I just started reading, and the understanding began to leap off the pages. Now, this is basic understanding, at the time. So prior to this, I had believed that you could be saved and lost, and saved and lost. And, I was Arminian in theology.
Me
Or at least
too.
that's what my church was. Yeah, I know you and I are very much alike. So I said, okay. Um, I started reading, understanding me come off the pages. Within a day or two, I knew that I was saved, and I was saved forever. Okay. I mean, that's an abrupt change when you've been Arminian, and
Oh
and
yeah.
now, yeah,
I'm
now I
getting
don't know
goosebumps because that happened to me too. And oh yeah. Yeah.
now I said, wow, and so I began to be free, and so I began, and for several weeks, I I uh, I would read, and the understanding would come up off the page, and I was just being freed from all my guilt and all the stuff that I had going on in my life, because the church that I was at was pretty good at heaping guilt on you, and so
Most of them
now,
are.
and I want to say I was part of that, and I did the same thing. So I'm not sure. I'm not saying to your folks here that I was, some super clean boy here. I was a part of that whole denominational thing, and I participated in it. Like I said, I was a hypocrite. I didn't really follow it all very very well. But anyhow, that was where I was. So I admit to all that, but I began to be free, and I began to see grace, and so of course, when you've been in prison, and all of a sudden you're out free, you start telling everybody about it. I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. So I started telling this to people in church and so on, and initially, it was really really uh, fun. It was and people started really enjoying it, but pretty quickly it changed.
Hmm.
And like I say, the young people uh, liked it, but the older people primarily did not like it. They began to talk about me, began to say things like, "He's drinking, he's an alcoholic." I forget all the things they said about me, And the funny part it didn't bother me. I just laughed, and I said, "Okay, well, I was just reading here in Matthew." He said, "Blessed are you, and men shall revile you and persecute you, and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake." you know, for such is the kingdom of heaven. So I said, man, I'm blessed here. So they're just heaping blessing on me, and so that's where I was. But eventually, it became a problem, and I could see that I was creating a problem in the church, and I realized all of a sudden that's not my job. That's not what I'm called to do. I'm just called to speak the truth, and where somebody is willing to listen, and if they're not willing to listen, I'll just move on. So I resigned my position in that church, and shortly thereafter left it.
Wow, what a beginning! And uh, gosh, that's a well, as you know, a similar thing happened to me. Not exactly, but and of course we're all different, and um, we are almost out of time. I knew this would go by really quickly, but we're going to finish up in a minute, and then we're going to do at least another recording that people will hear a week later. So before we do that, Mike, tell people how they can connect with you online and where they can hear your radio program and all of that stuff.
Well, they can email me if they want to at Mike Ruff, Rough, and you can pronounce that name any way you want to. The last name is Roge. It's been called everything, and I go by Ruff now because of another issue. But anyway, it's Mike Ruff, Rough, at Comcast.net, and they can get me there. They can go on YouTube under Mike Ruff and see our Wednesday night meetings that are recorded there. And then they can also go to our website at www.conversationsinchrist.com. And you can see well, you can't see, listen to a radio broadcast that we have here in our local town. And I have a buddy on there named Bill Rose, not the Bill we've been talking about on here, but this is Bill Rose, another guy, but he's another dear friend too. And we have conversations, and we don't have any script. We just like much the podcast that you and I have here. We talk, but we talk about spiritual stuff and doctrine and so on, and we present the gospel of grace, the hyper grace gospel, as Michael Brown calls it. So anyway, that's where you can find us, and so that's about it.
Well, I encourage people to connect you and to go to all those places that you talked about, because not only will they really enjoy meeting and hearing from you, but also from the rest of your group, the group that you've got on Wednesday night. And we will talk about that a little more in our next episode. So, Mike, thank you so much.
Yeah, because I want to talk about the second encounter I had back 10 years ago.
I want you to. So we'll do that. So thanks, Mike, for being here for this episode. And thanks, everybody, for being with us for another episode of Grace to All with Paul Gray. I'll see you all next time.